Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Now in this video I'm going to talk about the new tackle laws that World Rugby are introducing. Now the law is you won't be able to tackle someone from the waist up anymore. This is an attempt to prevent head injuries, especially concussions. And while I understand their feeling that they need to do something to reduce head injuries, this is a bit much. It's a bit radical, this change, because if you look at a rugby game these days, a lot of the tackles are up here at the chest. And yes, some tackles can go a bit higher, and they're rightfully penalised. But doing it from the waist down will have a lot of very negative consequences for the game, I think. And one of them is it'll make tackling almost pointless, simply because of the fact it'll be so easy to offload the ball. And that's why a lot of players actually these days tackle around the chest area, because they're not just tackling the player, they're tackling the ball in an attempt to prevent them from offloading. So if you make it that it's so easy to offload and there's no way a player can actually stop you by tackling, it makes tackling that player pretty much a bad idea. So I do suspect it will result in players standing off and not going for the tackles, which talking to a lot of people, they all say that this will make the game a lot more open. I do think that it won't if you have players who are afraid to tackle their opponents because it's so easy to offload, then it doesn't really make sense to put it into the law, really. And something else about the law that actually doesn't make sense to me, it's actually the primary thing, actually, is that I don't think it'll actually stop that many concussions. High tackles don't really cause concussions. The two things from my experience that cause concussions usually are whiplash when a player hits the ground. It doesn't matter whether you're tackled fucking high or low for that to happen. But it's also a tackling player coming in for a tackle. Because usually, and everyone's trained to do this, but anyone can make this mistake. It's when you're tackling a player, you put the head behind them. So basically when they go down, right, your head is protected. But it's also protected from a very dangerous part of the running player who you're tackling, and that's the knees. Because if you put your head in front of them, the knee goes right into the side of the head, and that's where you get your concussion from. So usually it's bad tackling technique is what causes a lot of concussions from what I've seen. Now also one thing that give you guys a bit of a point of information on this, I did hear very recently that it won't actually be brought in Ireland or a number of other Northern Hemisphere countries this season because it'll be brought in right in the middle of it. So basically that doesn't really happen, so they're going to delay it until the season after, next year. I don't think it's a good idea, and I think it will be quite harmful to the game. Tackling is a huge part of the game, but if you have players that are hesitant to tackle because it's so easy for an opponent to offload, it'll have a serious damaging effect on the game. So yeah, it's interesting. Again, I do understand why World Rugby brought this in. They do want to reduce the number of head injuries, and let me tell you, head injuries, concussions, they are very, very serious. We've seen cases here in Ireland where they've led to death, unfortunately. So yeah, World Rugby is 100% right to try to do something about it, but they need to be careful that they don't damage the fabric of the game, because they have to try and promote the game as well. So yeah, it's interesting. So I'm really interested to see your guys' opinions on this, on whether you're for this change or against it. Like me personally, I'm against it, but I do understand the motivation behind the change. Like, player welfare is very, very important. It is the #1 priority. But I think it's also important to protect the fabric of the game. So where does that balance come in? That's the real question here. So what are your opinions on this? I'd love to hear them. Put them down in the comment section down below. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. And subscribe if you actually like the content that I make. And don't forget to hit that bell icon to actually be notified on my latest videos. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.